Democratic primary, and we're just checking in with the Democratic district leaders in Mamaroneck to make sure that they either voted for Tim Idoni today or they're planning on doing so. Voter turnout has been particularly low. Your vote is very important. We hope we have your support. The polls close at 9 if you haven't voted already. And if you need a ride, please let us know. If you need to call back, you can call 914-419-0581. Thanks.
Hey, Frank. Hey, Jerry.
Hey, how are you?
All right. How are you doing?
Good.
Hi,
good.
Kelly.
Hi, Jerry.
Hey, Jerry.
Hi, Frank. I'm on the iPad. I'm trying to.
Yeah, so
fix
am
the
I
background.
actually. Video. How do I get? This is what I want. Okay, got it. Kelly, I haven't heard anything from the architect for the tennis courts. Is he supposed to call?
I thought he would. I've been in touch with Claude. I mean, I don't know if Claude or the architect was going to reach out. I thought Claude would reach out, if not the architect. So I'm surprised.
I'm sure they will. They just probably haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah. Hi, Maria.
Hey, Kelly, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good.
Good. There you are.
Here I am.
That's a fake background, isn't it? It's
Background.
it's beautiful. I was just saying,
Isn't it nice?
Beautiful bookcase behind you there. So, Jerry, did you hear of any other power outages in the village recently?
Today?
Last
No.
night? Today?
No.
Because my block was without power for all night and a lot of the morning.
No.
Yeah.
Nope. Didn't hear of any.
It may have been just our street. Oh, boy.
Okay. We'll do something else.
Evening all.
Hi, Peggy.
Hey, Peggy, how are you?
Well, how's everyone?
Okay.
Good.
Up on my agenda. Just so you'll know, we have somebody who's zooming in from the Army Corps. So I want to
Excellent.
start with them. Yeah. Megan's not available, but she's sending Nicole Vergonia.
Okay, I see that we have an attendee, but there is no name listed. And so without the name or any number or anything, I can't tell who that is. And
It may be Nicole.
it may be.
But she was going to zoom in on Megan's invite.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe.
You know, if she can hear us, I don't see her identified in any way, so I can't click on her and do anything.
Okay.
Oh, here we
let's see.
are. Well, here's Paul Ryan, who came in as an attendee.
Okay.
Let me see if I can.
I have to try and find my flood agenda.
I'm trying to click promote him, but here we go. Let me promote him.
This is not LMC. Oh, it's man the computer.
Hey, Joe called, but I couldn't talk to him. Okay.
Hi, Frank. We've never met. I'm Peggy.
Hi, Peggy.
Spoke on the phone.
Glad to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay.
I just need to get my other computer booted up so I can get my agenda. What happened to Paul?
He's here. He's here as a panelist now. And
Okay.
here Megan does appear, but we're
Nicole.
thinking that's
Nicole.
Sorry, I was just playing with my mute button there. Hi, how is everyone? Can everyone hear me okay?
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, no problem at all. How is
Jerry,
everyone?
are we already recording?
We are recording.
Yeah, it's recording. I gotta lower the TV.
And do we have a quorum? Not yet. Paul, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we have a quorum.
Yeah, you're good.
So
Looks good.
Dana's going to join us and leave early because she has a work commitment. So Kelly is going to email you to try and get it, or just email Sally to try and get a hold of the video so she can do.
Sure.
Oh, she is. Speak of the devil.
Great.
All right. Okay, should we get going?
Sure.
Nicole, we're going to leave the floor to you to begin, since you have the most juicy information, hopefully.
Yeah, so I just, this has always been a top priority for the senator. I know that I personally haven't been able to join you guys yet, but I know Meg has in the past as well. And, we've advocated to the senator, and he knows how much of a priority this is, and pushing it to be a priority for the Army Corps as well. And how serious of an issue it is from Mamaroneck. And, that's why we worked with Mayor Murphy to submit the earmark to our office. So from the Senate side perspective, we're still getting a handle on it and, allocating all of the earmarks that have been submitted to our office and getting those out to committees. But I know that from the House side, they're moving along a little bit faster than us. As you guys probably know, they had their earmark process a couple of weeks before us. Their deadline was a little bit faster, so they're moving before us. But we're continuing to engage with our Army Corps on this issue, and our team, and including our legislative team, and knows about this issue and knows how much of a priority it is for the senator. So we just wanted to join the meeting and just let you guys know that we're still fighting for this priority, and it's a top earmark for us. So we're aware of the issue, and so is the senator. So we know
it hasn't been it hasn't been submitted yet to Energy and Water.
No, nothing's been submitted to the committees yet from the Senate side.
Any sense of when that might happen?
you know, we're just moving a little bit. We're moving a little bit slower than the house side on this, just because we got them a little bit later. But once we know, our team can make you guys aware of it.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Now you can go back to your real life.
No problem at all. If you guys have any questions or anything, you guys know where to reach us.
Thanks very
Appreciate
much,
it.
Nicole.
Okay, great.
Have a good night. Jerry, question for you, because this is the first time I'm hearing about things being submitted separately to the House versus the Senate. Do you know if we were ever, if any information was ever required?
I submitted all the information to the Senate.
Right, but
no one has reached out to me for the House, and we have some junior members. I think I may have to reach out to them.
I think maybe we should just double check and make sure they have everything they need.
Yeah, because we have some youngsters now, and we have to make sure that we didn't miss something. But no, I didn't get anything.
And Maria and I had an
Bowman.
appointment booked with Jamal Bowman before he was actually sworn in to do a river walk.
Okay.
And he stood us up and never responded.
Okay. So what I'll do is I have the submission for the Senate. I'll just send it over to his office and say, hey, do I need one of these for you?
Yep.
That's all. And we'll see where it goes from there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let me just let the dog in.
Thank you.
Come on, Josette. Okay.
I'm going to ask everyone if it's okay. Frank is very kindly zoomed in with us from the building department. Talk about flood requirements in new construction. And why don't we deal with that side of the agenda, and then we'll come back and finish up the rest after if everybody's in agreement, so he at least can go home and have a normal life.
And if I could, he will have information on Old Business 1 as well.
Great.
The gazebo, because I sent him over there to meet with the organizers and the people who are going to build it. Okay. And so he'll have something to say about that as well.
Super. Frank, we're all ears.
So that project was vetted through all the boards, as you know. They did put their flood vents in that house. And as you know, Peggy, when they formed the foundation, the contractor put them in too low, but it was corrected.
I'm sorry, we're back to Ellis. We're not on the gazebo. I'm sorry.
Oh,
yeah, Ellis.
Sorry. Talking about Ellis, yeah.
Okay.
So he corrected that. The flood vents are in the correct place now, and the number and everything. He just got the approval on his sewer and water extension on Ellis. He got the health department county approval on that, and he'll be doing that work probably next week or the following week.
That's just connecting through Ellis to the other sewer line, right?
Yes, both the sewer and the water.
Right.
He had gotten his the county stream permit back in August 7th of 20.
Right.
And let's see, he went through, we had looked at the freshwater wetlands, our chapter 192, chapter 294, the stormwater management. It was vetted through our engineering consultant, Keller Sessions. The applicant addressed all their concerns. It was approved by the BAR back in 12/19/19. And I mean, ask me questions. I don't
Does
know.
anybody mind if I lead with questions?
Go ahead.
Okay. First question. So Frank, I don't know if you walked a block back, see what my house looks like versus that house. But when we raised my house in 2015, we were told a number of things needed to happen. If we wanted to build next to the floodway, we had to provide a HECRAS study, number one. Number two, we were told, and we ended up not building that way, and we ended up cantilevering the extension, so nothing was near the floodway. We were told that there were setbacks from the floodway in addition to setbacks from the river itself. And we were told, thirdly, that breakaway walls would need to have been put, if we ended up putting posts in, there would have to be breakaway walls because of the velocity of the water coming down. That house is at the floodway. It might be an inch in from the floodway, but it's certainly not set back any distance from the floodway. It never had a HECRAS, which I was told I had to do. And number three, there are no breakaway walls. That is a complete solid foundation built in a flood zone. And for example, there's a house on the corner of Bayhead and Orienta that is built way up, and it's all got breakaway walls. And it was new construction about 6, 7, 8 years ago. I can't remember when. But I was under also the impression that anything built in a flood zone had to have breakaway walls. Because what's happening is you had a field, basically, an open field. And you now have a monstrous structure in that field that's going to back water up. So I don't know how stormwater management can be maintaining. I mean, it's gonna back water up north, and it's gonna divert water south to a much greater degree. How is that at all possible to do?
Well, first of all, was your foundation in the floodway or outside of the floodway?
Outside.
Okay. Well, I can't speak for.
I'm sorry, it wasn't a foundation, they were posts. There was no full foundation ever.
Right, right. Well, that may have had something to do with it, the post, that it's more inclined to go with the floods rather than a foundation. I can't speak to why they made you do what you did on your house. I know that the Ellis house meets all codes by today's codes. All they needed were those flood vents, which they did. And then the water is not going to back up. If that river floods, the waters are going to go in through the flood vents, around the house, and keep going in that direction. It's not going to back up at all.
I'm going to beg to differ politely. I agree that it will go through the flood vents, and I agree it'll go around the house, but it's going to go much more slowly than having an open field or having a breakaway foundation.
But it's not going to back up. It won't back up.
Are you going to guarantee that to us?
I can't guarantee anything. I can't even guarantee I'll be here tomorrow.
It doesn't make any sense logically, Frank.
Why is that?
Because you now have a structure in the way where you never did.
Any flood waters will go through and bypass that house. It's not.
If they're going to go through flood vents that are.
No, yeah, right. They're a lot smaller.
Versus
yes.
an open structure, so
right,
an open field. So how could you say it won't back up as?
So the flood vents are just relieving pressure on that foundation.
I'm aware of that.
And that's all they had to do to meet today's codes. As far as the rest of the waters backing up because now there's a foundation there, I don't agree with you at all. Sorry.
It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sorry. We're gonna have to take this separately, and you're gonna have to prove to me how that's not gonna happen.
Why doesn't it make sense to you?
Because if it's required to put breakaway walls in homes in flood zones, why wasn't it required to do here? And the reason that they have breakaway walls is because it doesn't impede the flow of water. A concrete wall, even if it has 2 flood vents in it, isn't going to change. It's not going to be like having an open field.
What? Okay, that's not what was required for this house. Maybe
it doesn't make any sense to me logically. I'm sorry.
Maybe you can show me where it says that house has to have breakaway walls. Do you have the code reference or anything?
Of course I don't, but I'll find it.
Okay, well that's.
And I know the house on Bayhead was built because of that with breakaway walls.
Right. Well, I'd be interested to see that. And then that we'll know the reason why your house had to have those walls.
It doesn't have, my house didn't have to because I didn't build anywhere in the floodway.
Okay. Right, right.
Yes, columns.
Did you have to raise your house?
Yes. And we put an extension on because of everything that we lost that was underground initially.
Right.
And I originally thought Peggy had to raise her house because she got federal money for it, but she paid for it.
No,
that's my understanding.
I got both.
You did
I paid the lion's share of it, but I did get a grant.
Okay.
I'd be interested to see what the reason was and the history of that foundation and the post that you're talking about, because I'm not familiar with your house at all, but I'll look into it.
Honestly, I don't have any of the old documents because we were simply told you can't do it unless you do a HECRAS. What we were told is we needed to prove to the municipality that the flow of water would not be impeded by any structure being put in there, basically.
Well, maybe
therefore, if you're putting a foundation of a home in a field, it's only logical that that would impede water. And we ended up cantilevering it because it was less expensive than doing the HECRAS.
Right. I'd be interested to see. I'm going to try and go into our records and can see.
My guess is you're not going to find much.
When was this done? How long ago?
2014. We went up August 14, 2014.
7 years ago. Okay. Well, I'll try and find whatever information I have, and maybe I can get back to you.
And I'll see what I can dig up. But there was, I got a call from my contractor saying, Plan B. We can't do it. They won't allow it unless. And I remember, how on earth would I ever have known about a HECRAS? It's not.
And this was directed by the building department?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Frank, I can look. I have Slingerland's electronic files as well as his paper files, which are numerous.
Maybe there's something in there.
There might be something in there, Frank. We can kind of look maybe next week when we move over to the, to 120.
I appreciate that this isn't a massive, huge priority, but I just don't want it to go for 9 months and not.
No.
But is there a setback from the floodway that you need to build in?
I don't know the dimension. I know it was out of the floodway, and our consulting engineer was satisfied that it was out of the floodway.
Can we find out for our application what that would be?
Yep, sure.
I'm not always sure the consultants are right. So, anybody else have any other questions? Do you want me to recap this to you in writing, Frank? Would that be easier?
Sure, yes. You can send me an email, sure.
Okay.
Well, look, Frank, I'm not going to look through the files. I'll have Neary look through the files. I'll just be looking under Peggy's name and address.
Okay. All right.
I'll have our office assistant.
In the building department, well, I have all the building department files, but it's not, none of that's in there because it's not what we ended up doing.
I mean, you seem to, maybe there might have been conversations that Rich was involved in that I think he made. Because he took notes like a madman, that guy.
But,
well, there were always a dozen yellow pads on his desk.
Yeah.
But Peggy, you did construction on the house. Surely that must be in the building department file.
What we ended up doing is in the building department file, sure, but not what we requested to do.
Yeah, the history.
Right. Okay. We'll try and find out, and I will get back to you.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions on that property before we let Frank go?
Oh, we got to talk about the pavilion.
Ah, right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're on, Frank.
Okay, so you're talking about in Columbus Park, that pavilion? Yeah, they've been asking me whether we had a survey on that property, and evidently we do not have a survey, but the parcel is so large, and the structure that they're putting basically is in the center of that park, I told the applicant to have his design professional put it on a plot plan, which is a little short of a survey. He doesn't have to show all sorts of dimensions, just, you know, I guess the dimensions from the side yards and that type of thing. But it's in a, I think that project, half of it is in a C1 and the other half, I forget what it is, maybe an RM3, whatever that, it's a different zone. But in the C1, you don't even need setbacks. So he's going to put it on a plot plan. Once I get that in my hands, I'll know. I haven't gotten any construction drawings on it yet.
Well, our concern is that it be built again over the base flood elevation.
Oh yeah, right, definitely. But that's a slab, don't forget. It's going to be a slab foundation with wood posts coming up, holding up the roof.
But shouldn't that slab be built with flood vents over the BFE, 2 feet over the BFE if it's a structure?
So a slab, really, that size slab especially, is not going to move in a flood. There's no way, even if the floods go through.
Letting water through. Because again, it's right now is it?
That's fairly flat. That's fairly flat there. On Ellis, we know the Mamaroneck River goes downstream. In that location, if it floods, the waters are just going to flood around the gazebo, you know, the structure. It flooded, I think it flooded the garage across the street also.
Oh, it definitely has, many times.
Right.
But shouldn't anything in principle that's being built in a flood zone be built to FEMA standards, which says 2 feet over the base flood elevation?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think so, but I will check that out. That's another good question. Usually, you know, when you have any kind of tanks, propane tanks, generators, or that, you know, that may have, a generator will have to be built over the floodplain elevation, but anything else that's going to hold the tank down, a slab usually is sufficient, and it doesn't, you know, the floodwaters don't affect the slab, especially the size of that slab. But I'll check that out.
I think before we do anything, we should just be sure.
So you envision what, a slab that's 2 feet or 3 feet high? I don't know what the base flood elevation is at Columbus Park, but say it has to be built up 3 feet from the grass that's there. You're going to have this massive concrete octagon, I guess you'd call it, that's going to be out of the ground by 3 feet with flood vents in it? Or
it gets built on posts as opposed to a solid slab of concrete.
I think a solid slab of concrete is a much better situation than having posts in a floodplain. It's the same thing like the post on your house. That's more subject to moving in a flood than a slab.
Okay.
And if you have an octagon that's 40 feet in diameter, say, how do you put a flood vent through that? 40 feet through the concrete? You have to have a void in the concrete to let floodwaters go through.
That's why I'm saying if you put it on 8 posts,
I don't think, well, I just don't think.
Then the water would run freely under it.
I haven't gotten a design from the design engineer. So once I get it, I will kick that whole scenario around with him.
Yeah,
we'll do the right thing.
I think we should be sure anything we build in the flood zone is compliant to FEMA regulations.
Sure. And when you say post, you're talking about putting concrete up a couple of feet, right?
So
concrete column.
Yeah, I mean, if you can picture, my deck has tubes. Tubes were set up, concrete was poured in, and then the decking was built above it.
Above it.
This may have concrete columns that come up, out of, you say, the floodplain, but they'll be much bigger than what you see on a deck. The deck, you have a 12-inch.
Of course, it's going to have to support a lot more weight. But in theory, at least the water then runs. It's not obstructing the flow of water again.
Let's see what the design engineer comes up with, and then we can kick it around.
Okay.
Frank, this was going to be 60 by 20 when we met.
Right. Now, again,
okay.
I haven't got the actual plan yet, but that's what they were talking about.
Okay, good.
Frank, so you'll know, and Paul, jump on in. This our concerns in the committee are when they built the new stores where Chipotle is in the Bricksmar property, where the North Shore Farms is. Our committee doesn't understand why that new construction, again, wasn't built over the base flood elevation. And we've asked the village to look at legislation where everything in future would have to be built over the base flood. So anything now that we're seeing being built, we want to make sure is compliant.
I wouldn't have a problem with just a concrete slab that's flush with the surrounding grass, whatever, and then maybe 4 columns, you know, supporting, going up and supporting whatever else you've got.
Yeah.
But if you have to raise the slab 2 feet above, you're going to have more than 4 columns supporting it, because that's a heavy darn thing.
Mhm.
So again, it all depends on what they want to do. If it's just a slab that's, you know, right on the level with the ground and won't affect the, you know, the floodwaters, and just have, say, 4 columns,
Frank,
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
take a
It's
look
not
at the
like
parking
Bricksmore.
garage.
Where Bricksmore, you have a damn building going up,
Yeah.
and that restricts floodwaters.
In the parking garage at Sheldrake Place, Lofts, whatever they're called.
Yep.
Right.
They have a column coming out of and it's 2 foot high, and then they have the steel beam or whatever it is that holds up the building, but they have this concrete column. That may be something that would be required for this.
I think we spoke about that when we had the meeting at Columbus
Okay,
Park.
good. Okay,
Again,
good.
I haven't seen the final design. We were just talking at the time, but I think that's what they're probably going to do.
We just
Okay,
want to
good.
get ahead of it so that we're not playing catch up again.
And don't forget, Peggy, that's an open structure. Talking about floodwaters going through, it'll just go right over the slab. You know, if it's moving at all. Again, I think that's a pretty flat area. The water just sits there until it recedes.
No head
There's
forwards.
velocity there. It's not just sitting
It's
there.
not just sitting there.
There's velocity. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
I was just going to say that isn't a gazebo open? It's not like a home or a parking garage where it's
Right.
like, you know,
Yeah,
concrete or
wide
cinder
open.
blocks all the way around. It's wide open. So the water's just going to go right through
Right.
it.
Well,
Right.
no, the base though, Maria, if it's being built over the base flood and you put a solid concrete base there and it's 3 feet high or 4 feet to get over the BFE, then you're gonna have a problem.
I don't know, Peggy. I don't know. In my mind, I'm picturing if it's on the grass, and even with the grass, the water's going to go over
But then
better
it's
than
not
if
over the
it's
base
4
flood.
feet over. It's going to stop it. It's going to have make like a wave going up into it. If it's got to climb 4 feet
But
to
then
get
it's
over
not
it.
over the base flood elevation.
But would you even call that a structure?
Well, I think that's the
If you just
question.
got a
I mean,
slab.
this may be more like a patio with a shade roof over it.
Well,
You know,
it is
We
a
need to find
structure.
out.
It is a structure. You have to consider that a structure.
Okay, Frank, thanks.
All right, so then,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to rejoin us on a Zoom, Frank, but if you can just let us know through
Sure.
Jared, that would be great.
Sure.
The one thing I don't have before Frank goes is I didn't get any indication, and we didn't get any indication on the manager's side or the manager's office regarding the new FEMA maps. I don't know if building department was tipped off to anything. Do we have new flood maps from FEMA, Frank, in your office?
I heard they're due out in September.
Okay, so they're going to come out in September. Okay.
Would it be appropriate to address while Frank's here what the Metro North did to the trees alongside Hoyt Avenue?
No, that's me.
Okay.
I'm involved in that.
Okay. Now or later.
I saved you, Frank.
Yeah, you did.
Anytime Peggy wants. She's running the meeting, so we interrupt her enough.
I just think if we're good, let's let Frank go so he can get on with his evening.
Thanks
Okay.
for coming, Frank.
Okay,
Thank you,
guys. Okay,
Appreciate
thank you. Thank you.
Peggy, I just want to let you know that we have 2 attendees. Paul Ryan is an attendee, but he's in here both times. So, and then Lynn Gleaner is an attendee. Lynn, I will just say that if you want to speak, if you could, raise your hand or something, and she went off. But anyway, if I'm just monitoring who's showing up, and just gonna ask them to raise their hand if they want to speak.
Okay.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Okay. So we know about. I'm just going back to the agenda. The Army Corps. We know minutes from our last meeting. Was everyone okay with the past meeting's minutes?
I move the approval.
Okay,
Second.
then minutes are okay. We'll get them out tomorrow. Okay. Jerry, dollar amount for damages. Did we get anywhere?
We didn't. We're looking for it, but we didn't get anywhere since the last meeting.
Okay, so that one stays open. We know about we know about the George letter that did go out. The committee. So just so everyone knows, we had requested Save the Sound test the water immediately south of the road to nowhere. Peter Linderoff, is that his proper name?
Yeah.
Has reached out. He's happy to do it for us. We're meeting by Zoom, and anybody that wants to join us is certainly more than welcome. We're meeting by Zoom on Friday morning at 9 o'clock. I think he just wants to make sure where he's testing. I know that Dan Sarnoff got him the GPS coordinates, I guess they are, Jerry, but I think he wants some additional info.
Yeah, he wants to know, I think, exactly where to take the tests. That's really what we're trying to drill down to.
I think it should be certainly right below where those manholes are.
Okay. That's easy enough.
Yeah. So that's what we're making progress on that. Any news about the laws that we had requested be discussed at a work session? I know you were having trouble.
They haven't been addressed yet.
Okay, wasn't there supposed to be a special work session to just do backup stuff?
There was supposed to be a special work session, but then Victor couldn't make it. Nora didn't want to have the meeting without Victor, so it was canceled. What we did was start the last work session at 4 p.m. and to give us an extra hour, and then we did the executive session at the end of the meeting, so starting at 9:30. Yeah, so we're having really long meetings, and no one can say we're not working. But it hasn't been reached yet. It's remaining on the agenda.
Okie dokes. We had talked about status on the Waverly Avenue Bridge.
Waverly, yeah, the town engineer said it's going to go out to bid in August.
Did the village approve it?
We don't approve it.
Didn't you say last month that the village had to give it an okay and it was waiting to go to the board?
We had to address the issues that the residents raised. But it's a town bridge.
Right.
And they are moving ahead with it. And there'll be issues with the residents that we have to address.
Okay, I thought they were going to move ahead.
Traffic patterns, yeah. It's really going to come down to traffic patterns and how to reduce the truck traffic. Even though there's no truck signs all over the place, it's just one of those things.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked about. Sorry.
I want to talk to Paul about changing the one-way direction of Waverly since he lived there for so long, but I can do that offline, Paul.
Okay, I can call your office.
Thanks.
Maria, did we get anywhere with information for the website?
Yeah, that's pretty much done. Kelly and I sat down one day and she's amazing. She's a genius. And we banged that out.
Terrific.
So we banged it out. What it needs is some graphic help. I am not like graphic design talented in any way. So I've asked a couple people at the village who have access to or are able to do some graphic work to, put some color in boxes and arrange it graphically. And then we'll get that to you guys to look at and hopefully get it up and out.
There's a wonderful website that I use when I do my weekly emails, the newsletters, and it's called Unsplash. And you can get free pictures.
Oh,
Unsplash, one word?
There's one that's called Unsplash and the other is Pexels, P-E-X-E-L-S. And we could probably download 2 or 3 pictures to put on there in about 10 minutes.
That's good.
I don't know that I'm looking for pictures for the website or for the announcement. I'm trying to arrange the information graphically so that it makes sense.
Kelly, you might want to talk to Jennifer O'Neill, our library manager, because she was in charge of, we just did a whole web page for the library.
Okay.
And she might know who to go to do something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Laura Bott is also very good from the Bot Shop.
Okay. Yep.
She actually did the LMC graphics for us.
Great.
That's a graphic designer, and she's pretty reasonably priced.
Okay.
And then do we want to take that now that we have, in theory, or maybe this is premature, what would go in the go bags? Do we want to try and do something with the scouts, Jerry? Or is this premature?
No, so I think the next Eagle Scout that comes to me and wants to do a project, I'd like to present it to them, because it's probably something that a scout could easily put together. An Eagle Scout could easily put together, fundraise, do all of that stuff, and get his badge and get his his scout Eagle designation with that.
Good. Okay.
Yep.
Maybe one of us could be at that meeting.
Yeah, with the scout?
With the scout, yeah.
Yeah, so when they come to me, Paul, they typically say, what projects does the village have that we could do? And so that's how the conversation starts.
Okay.
Paul, you look like an old scout.
Yeah, he is definitely an Eagle Scout, Paul.
Maria, were you able to meet with Jerry to discuss the retaining walls in Guyon Creek?
Yes.
And
yes, that one.
Listen on that?
Very well. We looked at it. We looked at the footbridge. And the rest is up to Jerry to work his magic and see what can be done.
Yeah, so last week I spoke to Debbie Reisner at a manager's meeting that we had in Croton about it. And she asked me to send some pictures. I sent a few pictures to the board just now. And when we meet at the bridge on Barry, we will go over there and meet at that bridge as well. So I could show her. What I saw was that the opening under the post road is so much larger than the opening, 1,000 feet away at the footbridge. Mm-hmm. Makes no sense. But I told Maria that already.
Village.
Yeah, I know.
Jerry, what about the mountain of dirt next to 5?
That came from the Port Chester project and is going to be leaving the Port Chester for the Port Chester. So it's basically staged. Yeah, it's going back. It's going back. Yeah.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah, I know.
Great.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's a mountain.
I know.
Great. Any discussion with the county on if they're going to pave Mamaroneck Avenue, if they're going to wait to finish the projects, the bridge project, the replacement on Mamaroneck Avenue before they repave?
They're going out to bid for the paving at the end of this month, and they expect to pave in August, which indicates to me that they're not going to pave near that bridge because it's nowhere near done.
No,
but I think they're getting too many complaints, Peggy, on the condition of the road, that they're just moving ahead with the paving and the sidewalk and the signal lighting, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
that's great, as long as they don't pave over this thing that they're about to tear out in another 6 months.
No, I think they're going to stay away from that.
Good. Okay, more good news for today.
But Jerry, I hear that Mamaroneck is going to be a mess with all the bridge work that's being done. The bridge up on Old Mamaroneck Road over 95. I mean,
Yep.
everything, you're not going to be able to get there from here.
Yeah, so
They're gonna
I
be
think
paving.
Sarnoff counted 5 bridge projects within the next 12 months. So yeah, so you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe find a vacation home somewhere. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know what to tell you. Everything broke all at once. So everything's
You
getting
certainly
fixed
don't
all
want
at
to go
once.
up and down the post road.
I know.
Mm-mm.
Right.
Actually,
So
the
that's how it is.
construction up by the Heights has not really affected the traffic.
That's good.
They've done that very well.
Yeah, they're moving cars through there.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are. Paul, did you want to bring up the trees?
Yes, I would. I mean, it's related to what we do, but you know, I've been with Coastal Zone Management and the Flood Committee for so many years, and I guess the history of that area that they've stripped. You know, back in the 1800s, there were federal grants to the railroads. You know, there was the New York, New Haven, and Hartford.
Mhm.
So it had to be a federal grant of land to do all that. And they gave right away on maybe 50, 100 foot on either side of the proposed tracks. And I know the mayor sent a letter to Governor Cuomo, but I was hoping that Senator Schumer's representative would be here, because I think it's a federal thing, you know, involving the railroads. I mean, this is stripping that land. It's not only, you know, a sight thing and a noise thing for the residents, but there's also erosion. You've got that land on Hoyt Avenue that's almost vertical, and you get any kind of a flood condition, hurricane or whatever, and you got all that land there that's going to come washing down onto Hoyt. It's a total mess. And then, you know, it's being done in the town of Mamaroneck, also in Pelham. So it's a regional thing. And that, you know, Metro North is, I think, you know, going beyond their scope of authority, even if they have a federal land grant. Those were different times then. And in these days, there's much more to take into consideration. They stripped it, you know, I mean, okay, there are a lot of weeds and junk in there as well as trees, but they should be obligated to replant trees there to hold back that ground, to prevent flooding and erosion and sight and noise pollution. So whatever
do we know why
do,
do we know why they took all these trees out?
The August storm, they cited the August storm and the fact that 300 trees went down during that storm, interrupting the service on the line for many, many, many days. And the issue with our line is the catenary, you know, it's the electric running above and the towers. And so that adds another element of large trees next to the tracks, which is, you know, understandable. But the reality is that they sent out a notice to us as well as the area, the residents in that area, that they were going to be doing some pruning and cutting back some trees, never deforestation, never anything like that. And so we've been focused on contacting our state representatives as well as the governor, not necessarily thinking like Paul, but I don't disagree on the federal side, but we haven't approached it that way, because we went to the individuals who would have potentially some authority, funding, and other authority of the of the MTA. So to try to put a little pressure, the residents understand that there is a concern about the trees near the tracks, but they also were never provided any alternative. Now, the residents on the dead end of Revere, they're willing to accept a 15, 20 foot wall, you know, large fence or something like that to block off the noise. And they're not, you know, the reforestation. And Paul, what they've done cleverly is, when we contacted the DEC was out there, and they said that it wasn't grubbed, that there were no removal of stumps. And so the removal of stumps would have typically triggered anything over 1 acre would have triggered a DEC permit, but they're not doing that. They're just cutting them at the base, leaving the stumps in there, eventually to grow back into, you know, large bushes right out of a stump, like they always do. So eventually,
in 100 years.
yeah, but see, but that would happen on the inclines or like the slopes that you're talking about on Hoyt and on the other side on Bishop. That may happen there where it grows back and it gets bushy and all of a sudden you realize, oh, there's some green growth there. But on Revere, what they did was they Revere or Rainier, they added ballast, old exhausted train, like underneath the tracks, the ballast underneath the tracks, and they just took these large piles and spread it throughout the whole area. So now nothing will grow. Even the stuff that you would have anticipated growing from the stumps are not going to grow because they're covered by stone. So it's one big field of stone now. That's where really the people just went nuts when they saw that.
And that area does flood.
It does. And it also has this is not new stone. So this is old stone from oily trains that have been under there for 30, 40 years that get removed. It gets removed, you repair the tracks, and then you have these large piles of stone that you don't know what to do with. So instead of trucking them out or training them out in a hopper, they just spread it out. And so there's that contamination issue of
exactly ecologically that can't be so good.
Right. So they've created a mess.
It goes into 95, and from 95 it goes into the drains, which come to us.
Into the rivers,
yeah.
Into the rivers, yeah.
So they're making it much worse.
What the MTA has done, and now they're just hiding. They're just hide and cover. That's it. They're just. It's almost they don't show up at the meetings. They don't respond to anything anymore. So, we have to come up with alternatives. I'm trying to get a survey of that dead end street so that I could potentially just plant some leyland cypress or something to give some relief to the residents. Depends on where our property line is. I don't even know where our property line is.
And
there's a fence right up against it.
Does this turn into like an EPA type of issue?
But and that's a federal, right? So we would start at the DEC to see if they would do anything. I'm not sure. They were concerned about the disturbance of land, and that has not happened. So they seem to be backing away from any further investigation.
Well, one of the things, Jerry, when in prior administrations, they were dredging by the rivers and throwing the spoils up on the banks and not planting them, and everything would go back into the river. But wouldn't it seem that it would be wise to put some sort of ground cover on the bank, on the top of Hoyt? Because trees are going to take forever. Sorry?
It's all there. They didn't remove. They didn't remove any
left
stumps.
The scrub.
They left it there. So now it's growing back, and it'll eventually grow back into this nasty, bushy stuff. But at least it's something.
Well, it's something to hold the dirt back.
Correct. It holds the dirt back. That's imperative. You're exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I knew that when they did that would happen. But of course, a lot of residents were upset because they had their view, especially 225 Stanley, had the view of the train blocked, and now they don't, and it's ugly. And so that's where the problem is. Much different than the situation on the town line, on Hall Street and the other street. So I don't know what MTA. I don't think MTA is going to do anything, but we'll have to at some point see if we can elevate it to the federal level. It's getting a little bit of attention, but I don't know how much longer that's going to last, truthfully.
Well, I try Schumer's office and also our elected representatives. If only Nita were still here.
Yeah.
But try the federal.
Yeah, we'll try it. I have to speak to him anyway.
One other thing that I forgot to put on the agenda that I did want to ask you about, Jerry, what was it, 18 months ago, we went to the dam and met with Terry about those flood gates. Maybe this is something we should elevate to the Army Corps. Because they probably don't know about it.
No, I can't recall who now, but a couple of months ago, they raised, it might have been the state, someone raised the issue, hey, Mamaroneck, are you going to remove the dam or are you going to repair the dam?
That's been going on for years.
But we haven't heard it. I lost track of it. There's so many, balls in the air. So I don't know where that is right now.
We had discussed the dam in this committee, and one of the things that, obviously the residents of Harbor Heights are concerned because in a non 100-year storm, but any of the 10, 25, 50-year storms, the dam holds back a lot of water. And what Dan Sarnoff led us to believe was if they decommission the dam, that water would have to be held back somewhere. And there's nowhere to hold it back.
Right.
Other than having the dam.
So the alternative is to repair the dam. I mean, the solution potentially is to repair the dam.
The cost of taking out the dam was equal to the cost of repairing the dam, virtually. But that the cost of maintaining the dam on an annual basis was what the village did not, David knows about this, he's shaking his head. The village did not want to absorb the cost of maintaining the dam.
Once it's rebuilt.
Correct, once it's.
How many administrations ago was that? Because was that with us?
It's the world of Rich Slingerland, I would think.
Okay.
But I could be wrong.
That goes back for years, And the trouble, one of the troubles is that you've got an accumulation of silt. That's Well,
that's the problem with the floodgates.
And that's an ongoing problem. That you can repair the dam, but the silt levels will still rise.
But this might be something,
the effects of the dam.
This might be something if we alert the Army Corps, if the project goes back on, maybe this is something they can address while they're doing the project. Because it wasn't a huge amount of money, Terry said when we met with him, if I'm not mistaken, Jerry.
Okay.
It was just a matter of digging out that silt.
So tomorrow I'm finalizing the 5-year capital plan for the Board of Trustees for the meeting on Monday night. We'll pull everything. I'll see what kind of estimates we have and then add that to the capital plan. Because if we don't add it to the capital plan, it's a little bit more of a difficult process to add it later on.
Okay.
But I'll see if the Army Corps is willing to listen to our situation.
Well, if we have a project, the way it was explained to us when we've met with them, and Gene Brickman, who was the head of the project 2 heads ago, I guess, said that, one of the things he said was that they would absolutely take out the road to nowhere, that they would never put it into the initial design and cost because it would never, it wouldn't necessarily do the one-to-one, but that they understood, every engineer understood that it should come out and that they could just build it into the design as they're doing the project.
The dam project?
No, the whole Army Corps project.
Oh, the whole Army Corps project.
There is always, what I was led to believe was there are always cushions built in.
Yeah.
And when they actually design the project, they can do more than they originally propose. So it may be worth, maybe it's premature now because we're not 100% sure it's going to go forward. But once we get to that point, sitting down with them and saying, well, if we have a punch list of things we'd also like you to look at, this is a good one. Because if we could lower the level of the river, it would help.
Okay. So on the cost of the dam would not go over the Army Corps limit. I mean, we got to be careful on that. Rather get all the funding and everything approved and say, oh, by the way.
Listen, if they can't do it, Paul, they can't do it. But if there's money there to be, it's worth having a discussion. The worst they'll say is no.
So, but everyone knows that we didn't have when I asked for Schumer's office with an assistance in filling out the the paperwork for the earmark submission, it looked like they only had 6.5 million for us this go around, right? You guys
That's
aware of that?
I saw that somewhere. I don't know if that came from you. I saw that and I thought it was
Yeah,
low.
it is low, but that's what they said to put in. They said if you put in over that amount, you already go onto the fire pile. You know what I mean? So,
Okay.
so I didn't want to exceed it by putting in a $60 million earmark, which is what we're going to need at some point, or $60 million assistance.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure how that's going to work. So I'll look at if it's multiple years where we receive, stacks of money, and then they accumulate to what we need to do to where we need to get. But like Paul said, I don't want to overload. Like once they start, then I can say, hey, what about this? And hey, what about this?
Yeah.
Right.
Once it's passed,
Okay.
once we've gotten over that hurdle. Yeah, so I'm saying it might be premature.
I can go that route.
Do we
I can go that route.
Do we get, Jerry, a pile of money, or do we give our pile of money to the Army Corps and they just do the project?
No, so we accumulate money. So piles of money from the state, from the county, from us, and then from the feds. So we all have to kind of kick in our money, and it has to get to this large amount, and then they start the project.
But we're not getting all the money and paying for stuff. It's
we're
giving our money to the Army Corps, right?
It's all a series of commitments. Yeah.
Right.
No cash.
But we're not the bankers.
Yeah, no. Right. We're just part of the we pay part of the dinner.
Right. We're 9.5%, 8.5%.
Yeah, we're 7.8 million. We're 7.8 million.
Right. We're 8 because it was 65. I'm forgetting the numbers, but we and the county had to come up with 17%.
Mm-hmm.
So we're half of 17.
Mm-hmm. Oh, county comes up with more. They come up with 10 or 11%.
I thought the county was equal to us.
It's not a split. No, the number is higher at the county level.
That's why our number's lower then. It used to be a split.
Not an even split.
Not with us. That's the calculation I had. The paperwork that I had, it wasn't an even split. They were kicking in a few more percentage points than we did.
Then maybe that's where the 6.5 comes from, because we were always considering the 7.8 being half of.
No, I don't remember. I'll look at it and take a look, and I'll email everybody the numbers, the breakdown of the numbers. We're at 88 million now. The total number that I had to put in was 88 million for the project.
That's different than everything I ever heard, but that's good. But that would make sense as to why our number went down if the county's number went up.
Yeah. I don't know when it went up. I always thought it was higher, but it could have changed while I'm here, before I got here. I don't know.
I'll look through my old records and see what I can find too. It's not important, but it's curious. No. Anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, let me ask you, because I don't know if you've been following in the journal news. There's been a lot on the Lake Island Dam, and I guess they went public, so it seems to be something that's people are paying attention to. I mean, is that something that we would want to maybe facilitate it, going a little more, getting a little more attention from the newspapers about about the plight of our dam, and maybe it would take a similar, be covered in the newspaper and maybe get a little more attention? Is that something we'd want to do? Something that makes sense?
Dude, they're going to get the homeowners to pay for a big chunk of that. That's the way it looks to me. And then several municipalities kicking in. So I think our situation is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's out of question, but I wouldn't want to own a home on Lake Isle right now.
In our situation, there is definitely a link to managing floods in the future with that dam. So for us, it's a little bit more. I don't know the situation at the over there, but with us, it's it's keeping or protecting the homes down, downstream.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess
There are
That's right.
21 homes that flood.
Yeah.
I guess
Correct.
the similarity are dams that aren't being paid attention to by governments.
Mm-hmm.
That's the similar point.
How are the homeowners being held responsible for paying for this at all if they're downstream?
I think when the development went up, the dam was put in. It was keyed into the development of that housing project. Mm-hmm. So public, private, I'm not quite sure, but it's a little bit different than ours. Yeah,
that's not the case with us.
Downstream, but of course, the county's putting in 13% or whatever, so they're already kicking in.
Yeah.
As well as the state.
So the homeowners there are getting hit twice, 3 times.
Yeah.
I think with us, it's a matter of what the capital cost and what the board would want to do.
Well,
That's where it comes down
and the
to
question of if you decommission the dam, what do you do with all that water if you're responsible mm-hmm. for not letting it downstream?
Yep.
Where do you put it? Because it's got to go somewhere.
No, you're saying it has to be dammed up someplace. Because if it's not there, it's not there. But going up the line, we're on the border there. We're on the Harrison border. So they're not going to volunteer.
I was going to say, we know a good neighbor's there. What's happening with that tree? I'm sorry, you mentioned it and I never understood the answer last week. That half a tree that's still sitting in the river, right up in the Heights, the one that you guys took down that was on the street on North James, but the whole half of the tree, which was from the Harrison side of the river that fell over, is still there in the river.
I don't remember talking about it.
My neighbor sent you pictures. So about a week and a half ago, we let you know Roxanne Brushani and Dennis reached out to you to say a tree that it had fallen in a storm about 1.5 years ago, and it was from the Harrison Bank, fell across the river, and was leaning on the wall, the retaining wall on the street, and it was being held up by one little scrawny sapling. And it kept.
So I asked Tony for a better timeline. I never got a.
So they took out the part of the tree in Mamaroneck.
Yeah,
but
not the one on the other side
is sticking. It's in the middle of the river, and it's going to create a massive problem if there's a storm.
Yeah, let me check to see if Tony got a hold of them.
Okay,
that's good that you remind me.
Typical of Harrison.
Let me see. Yeah.
No surprise.
Well, how many years is it we're asking them to cut the trees down that are falling on their bank of the river?
Road to nowhere, everything,
All of it, yeah. Okay. Anybody have any other questions?
They can buy a golf course, though.
Are they buying Willow Ridge?
Yeah.
They are.
Actually, they're not even invited to buy it, and they're still buying it.
And they don't know the price yet.
Nope, that doesn't matter. Okay.
Anyone have anything else? Maria, thank you for doing that so quickly. Kelly, thank you for your help.
It's all Kelly.
No,
she's a rock star.
No, we banged it out together.
Cool.
Yep.
Great. All right, we'll have a meeting in July. We normally skip August for vacay. I will say one thing, Jerry and Kelly, it's so much easier to do minutes when it's on a Zoom because you can refer back.
Yeah.
Rather than doing them in person. If no one objects, I would prefer to stay on Zoom.
I think that we'll get into a question of whether the governor's order on COVID emergency will require us to go back under the open meetings law to in-person meetings. So I think it may not be our choice.
Is there a way to record them on Zoom in an open meeting?
That I don't know.
Maybe that's worth an investigation.
There's a way to, no, there's only a way to record meetings like we do Board of Trustees meetings, where we would have to get LMC
I
to
know.
record
See,
the
there's
meeting.
no way to set up a Zoom and have a computer with the Zoom going and recording?
No,
that
because
meeting?
I don't, because you wouldn't have all the participants linking in. We would be live instead of this. So there could be a stationary camera that we add to the unit that's at LMC, and they'd have to turn it on if they could turn it on remotely. And we meet in the courtroom, because I don't really want to meet in the regatta anymore. We meet in the courtroom and then just have the meeting recorded. That might work. If Matt can set something up remotely, then that's the way to.
For $100,000, Jerry.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But Sally's been doing the minutes for years like that, right?
I've got to say, it just makes everything so much easier to have it recorded.
You know, I agree with you. I think there's another issue, which is all these committees are required to comply with the open meetings law because of a local law. They're not required by state law to comply with the open meetings law. So all these notice issues and they're all because of a local law, not because of state law. And so if we said that our meetings are not subject to the state open meetings law, but we're going to require our meetings to, have notice posted on our website, and have minutes posted on our website and, but not subject to the state structure, then we could continue on Zoom.
And we could also post the Zoom meeting on the website and, and that would be part of the permanent record.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. That would be fine.
I mean, I would love for all of our committees to get out from under this structure, because I think it hampers us a lot, and it just adds this layer of bureaucracy that I don't think is necessary if we, provide advance notice and put the minutes up. I mean, these committees aren't secret star chambers.
No, they're mini work sessions. That's what they are.
Yeah.
They're looking at items and getting stuff done.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I mean, you could call in when you travel, because that's what I'm doing now and next month too. And I'm sure it will get more participation from more people who would normally be like me and, have travel in their work.
I think that's a good point, Stephen. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see what we can do about that.
Okay.
That'll be part of the bigger discussion.
Yeah, that would have to be a Board of Trustees change in the law. So
I appreciate that. So sometime in 2030, maybe we can get it on a work session agenda.
So the state legislation proposed that Zoom would continue, or this type of platform would continue for meetings. So because they're anticipating the governor, maybe not July 5th when it expires, but the following month, that he'll say, okay, everybody back to normal.
It's efficient. You don't have to travel.
I agree.
You go in your sweatpants.
I can let the dog out when she needs to go out. I could do a lot of things.
And inevitably it rains on a flood committee meeting. So it's just easier not to have to get wet.
I agree completely. I think these Zoom meetings are much more efficient.
And I think they go faster. And
you don't have the problem of meeting rooms. I mean, we're short in the Village of places to meet. So you solve that problem too.
That's right.
Well, you don't have the public getting up. You don't have Stu T-Kurt and
if the public wants to attend a meeting, they can reach out in advance and get a Zoom coordinate.
And they don't even have to reach out in advance, because on the village calendar, there are all these links they can come
they can just Zoom on.
Join,
and they can join by phone. They can do a lot of things.
Yeah. Right. I watch the attendee, attendance sheet the whole time and watch for someone's hand going up. So.
Yep.
I mean, I just think that would be more efficient for the whole, across the board.
I agree. Totally agree.
And then maybe in the future, you wouldn't have to take minutes, because you'd have a video record.
Now there's an idea.
Yeah. It's a lot easier.
It'd be great. It'd be really nice.
Okay.
Jerry, I'll call you next week.
Thanks, Paul.
We've left on an upbeat note.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Have a
Thank
good
you
night.
all. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.